Let's begin with the obvious. Honor looks like a bad trade, bad strategy, naive, because dishonor has clear advantages. It is easier. It lets a man say what people want to hear, take what is not earned, avoid pain, and escape consequence. So when Dunc sees a prince brutalizing an innocent woman and decides to intervene, he is not doing the smart thing. He is a nobody standing against royal blood. And then Baelor does something equally irrational. He joins him. He steps into another man's fire for no personal benefit, which brings the question. If this way of being is so impractical, then why does it feel so right? Why does Dunc resonate with us so deeply? Let's attempt to articulate these feelings. Specifically, why do we like honor, despite all of its apparent disadvantages? Why even the selfish should care about honor? And can we live honorably without becoming a martyr? But first, we need clear terms. By honor, we do not mean reputation, virtue signaling, or moral theater. Reputation is what other people think of you. Honor is an internal rule that ensures you do right, regardless of circumstance. Our modern societies have preserved reputation while losing honor. People still care very much about looking good, but that is not honor, that is branding. A real problem in itself, because it means the outer signals of trust remain apparent, while the inner substance has disappeared. We do not need to imagine what widespread dishonor looks like. We are already living in it. The mindset is basically like this: exploit, lie, take shortcuts, and disappear when things get difficult. And at first, nothing happens. Society still functions. People still have jobs and a normal-looking daily life. But something less visible decays first: trust. And trust is not something sentimental. It is the bedrock of a developed society. Once trust fails, everything else becomes unreliable or outright impossible. Deals cannot be guaranteed. Institutions cannot be relied upon. That means the real damage of dishonor is not moral, it is practical. Because a high-trust society can coordinate, it can build wealth, and it can sacrifice now for a better future. A low-trust society cannot do that because layer by layer, people start optimizing purely for self-gain and self-protection. Even those who are not evil are forced into it because once they believe no one else will act fairly, they start grabbing what they can before there's nothing left. They rightfully start asking, why should I be the fool? Why should I contribute honestly while everyone else exploits the system? Dishonor is contagious. Now the cynical person would say something like this: fine, maybe dishonor is bad in general, but if it helps me personally, why should I care? And on the surface, that sounds intelligent, because dishonor appears personally rational. If most people are honest, cheating can look smart. If most people obey the rules, violating them can be an advantage. And in the short term, that can work, but only in the short term. Because inevitably, enough people will cheat and the background trust that made the cheating profitable will disappear. The system will fail and then even the cheaters lose. So the selfish person makes a classic error: short-term gain for long-term collapse. But that's only in theory. Surely, there are systems that are simply too big to fail. History says otherwise. Countless empires, societies, states, and major corporations collapsed exactly like this. Perhaps the greatest and most recent example being the Soviet Union. It was the definition of too big to fail. On paper, it had the biggest territory, infinite resources, greatest industrial capacity, educated population, incredible military power. And yet the whole thing crumbled in the most glaring way possible, the culmination of which was none other than the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The nuclear reactor's design flaws were known but covered up. The rules to manage them existed, but they were not followed. The radioactive danger was clear, but it was hidden from the public until it was detected thousands of kilometers away in other countries. layer after layer of dishonor until reality presented itself and everyone lost. Not because of some dramatic villains, but because of people doing something much more common, acting at the expense of everyone else. And that's all it takes to bring down even the most powerful and resource-rich systems. Deep down, we all understand this. That is why Dunc resonates with us so much. When he does the right thing, he is not just helping one imaginary victim. He is upholding a law without which civilization breaks down. We are not merely admiring kindness. We recognize the defense of an invisible structure that all of us depend on. But even so, the selfish person can say, fine, maybe honor matters for civilization and long-term success. But what if I only care about my own personal enjoyment? Even then, you can stick to short-term hedonism and withdraw from the broken society to some degree. But you cannot withdraw from yourself. There is the idea that self-worth can be achieved by outside factors, such as status, income, or the approval of others. That kind of confidence looks good, but it is fragile because it comes from the outside. Self-respect comes from internal evidence, and that means dishonor carries real psychological cost. No matter how much you distract yourself or attempt to rationalize, you still know. That is why Dunc resonates with us so much. It's not just that he is brave, it's that he acts in a way that preserves his own ability to live with himself. And the surprising amount of strength comes from that. Because when you are internally fulfilled, it becomes much harder for the outside world to exploit you. Now we get to the part that most people get wrong. They hear an argument for honor, and they assume it is an argument for reckless self-sacrifice. It is not. Honor is not the same thing as charging forward with no plan. It is not martyrdom for its own sake. And Duncan the Tall actually shows this clearly. He does not suffer because he is honorable. He suffers because he is honorable, naive, and undisciplined. He could have protected the girl without kicking the prince's face in. Baelor shows the same on an even greater scale. Notice that he struggles to get his helmet off. That's because it is not his helmet. It is his son's helmet. Baelor did not bring his armor. And so the lesson is not that honor gets you killed. It is that good intentions are not good armor, and that principle does not replace preparation. That distinction matters enormously, because a lot of people reject honor not because they reject principle, but because they deem it to have too much of a personal cost. Bringing us to the real question, how can we be honorable without being stupid? 1. A principle should orient you. It should not blind you. The moment you turn every value into naive absolutism, you stop paying attention and you stop recognizing reality. And then you become food for those who have no principles at all. So yes, have ideals, but not in a way that prevents you from thinking. 2. Prepare accordingly and do not forget your armor. If you know the world contains dishonorable people, then getting exploited by them is not moral beauty, it is negligence. So remain aware, prepare in advance. Do not make yourself easy to exploit. Failing to do so would be dishonorable in itself, because it directly rewards the bad behavior of others. When decent people remain weak, naive, and victimized, they do not merely suffer personally, they reward bad behavior, which is dishonorable. Baelor is admirable. He is also a warning that conviction without preparation will get you crushed. So always bring your armor. 3. Own your choices. One of the easiest ways to become dishonorable is to live in permanent excuse-making, to always have a reason, always have a justification about why your compromises were unavoidable. And sometimes they were, but even then, they were still yours. Until a person can take responsibility, he cannot act honorably. He's just a willing slave to outside circumstance. 4. Empower yourself first. This is the least romantic part, but also the most important. A weak person with good intentions is easily bought, bent, and bullied. So empowerment is crucial. You must become harder to coerce and intimidate. You must build competence, leverage, independence, and the capacity to absorb difficulty without folding. Because the truth is, principles can only be kept when you're not one missed paycheck or one challenge away from collapse. So the final version of the argument is not, be honorable no matter what. The point is not to become a one-off martyr. The real argument is, build yourself into someone who can be honorable. That is much closer to wisdom. Become a person whose ideals can survive contact with reality and continue to do so for a lifetime. That is the most consequential version of honor. Not theatrical virtue, just a person with standards and enough strength to live by them.